Hello everyone, welcome to my Dutch Roundabout tutorial. I will be going through the whole process from placing the roads all the way to marking and detailing them. If you feel overwhelmed along the way, I have linked some videos in the description to get you up to pace with the mods we will be using. I have also linked the whole collection of assets we'll be using during this tutorial. Now, just to quickly go over the roads we will be working with. First, we have a two-way bike road, then a one-way, one-lane road, alongside a one-way, two-lane one. An asymmetrical road to make a median at its center, then the one-way, two-lane road with separated two-way bike lanes, and finally a large two-way road with bike lanes on each side. Now I'm going to start by drawing the roads real quick. We just need a simple kind of shape for the roundabout, starting off with the large road, then the main roundabout roads with bike lanes. Now for the asymmetrical road on the right side, and the one-way, two-lane roads to finish off the roundabout. Now I'm going to draw the one-way, one-lane roads going into the roundabout in a kind of weird way. One will be straight as it should be, and the other will be kind of moved around, and we will fix that later with the node controller. I will also place the bike roads going in and out from this node of the roundabout, and I will connect the rest of the bike roads together to make this intersection on the side. Now, to do some cleanups on the roads, I'm going to use Network Multi-Tool to remove some nodes that we don't really need. Now I'm mainly going to move around the nodes to kind of shape the roundabout. And this is mostly all going to change in a bit, because we mainly need a shape to work with for a node controller. And even after shifting and moving things around with it, there will still be some moving around to do to get the perfect shape for the roundabout. You might be wondering what is happening with this node and why do the roads look like this? Well, that's because we will be shifting all the segments going into this node, and this will make the diagonal road go in the same direction as this one. I'm going to move these segments to set up for the shift that's going to happen in a bit. I will also draw the actual way that the roads will be going in. So I'm keeping the upper one straight, and I'm making the lower one have the same direction. Now finally, to show you how that's going to happen, I'm going to use Node Controller and select the purple segment, which is the one that's kind of diagonal to the actual lane. I'm going to shift it, keep shifting it until it looks parallel to the other roads. I'm going to move them back a bit and straighten them to kind of remove the glitches. I'm also going to move the orange one a bit so it doesn't go into the road that's coming into the roundabout. And I'm going to shift the blue one to preserve the shape of the roundabout. Now keep in mind, the measurements I'm using are not specific. You just mostly need to work on the shape and not the measurements. Because when you have something that complex as this node, everything kind of needs to be shifted around. For example, when I'm moving the purple one to the left, the center of the node feels like it's moving to the left. And that's why we moved this blue one to the left, to kind of keep the shape and roundness of the roundabout. Now here you can see how I mentioned the node will feel like it's going to the left, but it's actually still on the right. And when you hover over the segments with move it, you can kind of see how they were originally placed, but now they look completely different. I want to mention that I edited out the parts where I shift the segment around because I ended up resetting its position at the end. And now it's time for the final edits of the roads. We're going to move the nodes around a bit just to kind of refine the shape of the roundabout. And again, there's no real guideline to follow. We just need the shape of the roundabout to look good enough, or round enough at least. I'm also going to fix the shape of the bike roads around the roundabout. Let's complete this bike road and extend it outwards. I'm also going to move it closer to the roundabout because that's how it is in real life, and then straighten this part out. Now it's time for Node Controller to fix this segment just a bit. We need it to be a bit further from the roundabout. And I'm going to finally just fine-tune the edges and move them around until the clipping is gone and we are satisfied with the shape of this node. Now we are finally done with Node Controller and moving roads around, and it's time to dive in Intersection Marking Tool. And it's finally time for Intersection Marking Tool. Starting with a large road, I'm going to draw all the lines in this segment to visualize where everything would go. And usually a good place to start would be with fillers. So I'm going to start by drawing the bike filler on the leftmost. Now all the templates I will be using for Intersection Marking Tool are available in my template bag that will also be in the collection. Now I'm going to place the grass filler, and this will have a 0.1 elevation, so 10 centimeters. And I'm using 0.1 because I have the curb height adjuster mod, which reduces my curb height to 7 centimeters. Now I'm going to continue with the rest of the fillers. They will all look the same. They will all have a 0.1 elevation, a 0.1 distance from the lines, because we will be placing curbs on each side of the fillers. Okay, now that these are done, we are going to start with changing the line into curves. Now, usually when you remove the white line next to the fillers, you will have this jagged edge, which can be fixed by turning on follow guide. But for this case, I don't need the space between the filler and the curb, and I cannot move the filler into the curb because then it will paint the curb itself. And that's why we'll be using a curb prop line, since props don't get colored over by fillers, but the networks and the sidewalks do. Now usually you have two options to align the curb with the actual curve of the road. For this one, I'm going to move the point itself so it's perfectly aligned and lower it just enough so it's right above the sidewalk. And now I'm going to align the second point of this line with the first one. And by the way, if you do not know, if you want to select a line in Intersection Marking Tool and you don't want to scroll through every single line you have, wondering which one you want, you can just redraw the line while holding Ctrl and it will automatically select it for you. Now I'm going to paste the same curve on each line that we have. Also fixing this filler that just needs a lower distance from the lines. Same goes for this other one. And not to forget to move the points on the right side. Fast forwarding a bit, I changed the rest of the lines into curbs, and now it's time to add actual grass. To do that, we're going to select one of the lines that are connected to the pillars and add the grass line to it from my template pack. This template uses the meadow grass and comes with the correct settings you will need for it. So just shift it into place and then you can fix the elevation until it's barely visible above the filler. Next up, we're going to paste the grass on the other two fillers. And you might notice that the grass is a bit too big for these fillers because they're smaller than the center one. So we're going to scale down the grass until none of them bleeds out of the filler, and then just accommodate the step and the height of the grass to match the scale. And then finally just paste it on the other side of the road. And now that this road is done, we're going to apply the markings to the whole road using Ctrl-Shift and B. Moving on to the roundabout road, I'm going to use the same technique, which is just placing all the lines on the segment and then working my way up. Now I don't think I need a line there, so I'm going to move to the fillers and I'm going to place a grass filler again in the center. And now the bike filler. Now, for creating the curb, you might notice that the line is quite far from the sidewalk. And if we move the point into the sidewalk like we did earlier, we will have bike lanes that are not the same width as each other, and we don't need that. So we're going to use a trick to hide the space between the filler and the sidewalk in a bit. For now, I'm just finishing up the curb on the median. And for the inside curb, I'm using a curb network instead of a curb prop, since there's no fillers that will paint over the network on this side. And now it's time to fill this gap. So let's start by selecting the line and adding a prop line, and we're going to select the square plowable pavement 4. Now as you can see, it's quite bigger than what we need, so I'm going to scale it down just so it's bigger than the segment we're trying to fill. Now we can just move it to the right so it's just outside the filler's range and lower it just above the sidewalk. That way it blends perfectly with it, and we just decrease the step until nothing underneath it shows up. And there you have it. The road is done, and you would not be able to even tell that the sidewalk was moved. Now I'm going to connect just this line between these two roads, and I'm going to use the same technique as we did earlier to kind of show you how a curb prop will look like. When the curve is really strong, it will start showing these kind of empty spaces between the curbs. And to fix that, you just need to lower the step just a bit, enough to hide this part. Now we can just copy and paste the pavement from the other segment to this one. And not to forget to align the points. Now before we move on, I'm just going to copy and paste this segment to the other one. And now we can start with the asymmetrical roads on the right. Okay, this feels too long to work with. I'm going to split it in two with Network Multi-Tool. And that's much easier to work with. Now I'm going to place the lines again like the last two times. And I'm going to start with the center median. I'm going to use a dashed line because that's how the roundabout is in real life. Now you can obviously keep it as a solid line in your build. Now this road has a couple of differences between the previous two we did. First, I'm going to use the network curve this time because there's no coloring fillers, and I'm going to move the points all the way to the sidewalk, which will be gone in a bit. But first I'm going to add the grass filler, and I'm adding a curb to the grass filler within the lines. So first the grass filler, which needs to be further away from the lines, and then we'll add a curb network that will be shifted towards the filler. Okay, now time for some magic. I'm going to use the same plovable pavement line we did earlier, but this time I'm going to use plovable grass instead. Now it's going to be the same kind of technique. We just scale it however we need it and fix the step and the height of the grass. And as I shift it to the left and then fix the step, you'll see how it completely hides the sidewalk and you would not even guess there was a sidewalk before. To fix these small imperfections, we just need to reduce the step of the line by just a bit. And now that this is done, I'm going to paste it to the other side as well. Now you'll notice it's sort of overflowing to the side, and we don't really need that. To fix this, we just increase the offset from one side. And we just need to reduce it enough to make space for people crossing the roundabout here. Moving along to the bike roads, I'm going to do the lanes first. Obviously we're going to start by drawing the lines, and for the center one I'm going to use the parking template because the settings of the parking template are closest to the dashed line style of Dutch bike roads. Usually you might want to use prop curbs for the sides of bike lanes, since the networks will be colored by the fillers. But for this one I'm going to use the network because I need it to be 150% its actual width, and props don't work well with 150% scale. They just become really clunky. So to work around this, we will enable follow guide in the filler. And we'll move the curve just enough that the filler doesn't bleed through it like it was doing just now. And now that we have set the follow guide of the filler to be on the parallel lines of the road, I'm going to increase the width of the network and move it just enough so these small lines stop showing. Time to paste this curve on the other side. And we're done. Let's apply this to the rest of the roads. For whatever reason, nodes do this weird thing with shifting of networks and props, so I just need to go over these two lines and flip them back. Okay, and with that done, let's go over to the bike intersection. I'm going to use the curved network line that we were working with in the bike road, and I'm going to place it on each border of the intersection. Next, I'm going to place the filler on the whole node. And I will use follow guide to make sure that the filler does not go over the curve. Before I continue, I just want to show you how the intersection should look like, specifically how the lines continue towards the center of the intersection, and then draw a yield sign. Now, to make this, I'm going to draw the lines at the center. I'm also using the parking line template, and then converting it to a solid line. And then I'm going to draw an invisible line from the other side, and I will use this invisible line to stop the solid line from going any further. I'm going to draw the rest of the invisible lines now. That way it's easier to place the rest of the lines. Now that this is done, you might be feeling that the lines are too close together. It doesn't feel like it makes sense. So to get the lines back, I'm going to draw a perpendicular line. To do that, you move your cursor behind the point like I'm doing right here, and you just click there. And now we have an extra place to stop the line before it's at the center. And now we can do the same thing from each side. But this technique is far from perfect. You will run into some issues like right now where the line will be too close to the center compared to where we want to stop it. To work around that, you draw the line and you split the point into two, and you go back to the line and align it to the left or right depending on where you are, and then the line will actually intersect where you want it to be. And the great thing about this is you can manipulate how far you want the line to stop. So you can go back to the point and change how large the split is to move the intersection wherever you want it to. Now that all the sides are done, it's time to add the yield signs. And to do that, I'm going to select the perpendicular line we created earlier and add a yield rule to it. Now we're not quite done with the intersection and the roads just yet. We still need to add grass to them. So I'm going to use the same technique we did earlier. I'm going to copy and paste it on the roads here. And as you can see, they're kind of bleeding into the road. So I just need to shift them away. Now that's just not enough. I still need to offset the grass a bit. Now I just need to paste this all over the place. Now for the intersection itself, there's a couple of ways to do this. One of them being Procedural Objects, and the other one would be Intersection Marking Tool, which I'm going to stick with for this one. Now I'm going to paste the grass we used earlier, and I need it to be smaller because of how strong the curve is. Just need to find the right size in order to completely hide the pavement and the ruining. And now that I'm satisfied with the results, I'm going to paste it on the other sides. For these small gaps, I'm going to place a small plowable grass on it. And that will be it. Time to mark the last roads, and they are pretty straightforward. We're just going to add a curb and grass at the center. Before we start working on marking the intersections, I'm going to draw the lines of each part of the intersection just to visualize where everything will be going and how everything will be going. So for example, I know that the bike lanes need to go in this direction, so I just draw the lines of the lanes, and I'll draw the rest of the lines that will be used by the cars. And I'm going to do the same thing on each intersection that we have. Now that all the intersections are marked, I can easily see, for example, how the bike lanes are skewed at the intersection. So let's move things around to fix it. So no matter how much you move these nodes and segments around, these small places where the pavement's showing will not go away. So the only way to fix that is to reduce the step enough for the grass to fill the pavement. And just like that, we can copy paste this one on the other side. Now after all these changes, I noticed that the left side started to look kind of out of place. So let's try and align them now. I hope you enjoyed me fighting with Node Controller, but now we have a good shape for the roundabout, a nice little circle at the center. Now it's time to mark the intersection. Before we start, I want to show you how the intersection will look like in a bit, and I just want to mention one thing beforehand. These yield signs are not made with intersection marking tool because you can't really get the IMT signs to have that shape. So to make those custom yield signs, since I can't find a good enough singular yield sign, we're going to create one ourselves with procedural objects. Now don't be too scared, we're not going in too much detail with procedural objects. But anyway, I'm going to start by using a yield sign from the USRP pack, and I'm going to convert it to a procedural object, place it, edit it, and then press tab 3 times to get to the customization panel, and then use right click to select the points on the right and move them with left click to the left. Next I'm going to do the same thing but for the lower points, and I'm going to get them closer to the ground. That's usually done to stop the vehicle from glitching when it's converted to a procedural object. And that should do. Now we can use this one anywhere we want. With the yield sign ready, we can start working on the intersection. And just like before, I'm going to start with the fillers, mainly the grass one. Now there is one thing I want to talk about, and that is the bike lanes coming into the roundabout, specifically into the two-way bike lanes. There's a couple ways of doing this. One being drawing a perpendicular line and using that one for the filler, and the other one would be to draw another line going into the upper left, which is the technique I'm going to use right now. So basically you draw the line coming from the bike lane into the upper left, which I'm doing right now, and you can draw multiple ones to see which one fits best for the direction you're going for. And with that done, I can finally draw the pavement filler I need. Okay, and now this filler is going to be a bit different. I need it to be on the level of the road, so when placing it I'm going to lower it to a 0.01 elevation. And I will add a little corner to it. Up next are the sidewalks, and I've noticed that the space for them is too small, so I'm going to move the road back a bit. Okay, now let's place the crosswalks. I need them to be quite large, so let's increase their size. Okay, that should be good enough. Let's copy and paste that over there. Let's put in the bike filler now. When you have an intersection that's that complex and a shape that's that complex, a good idea would be to place the filler in one go, because if you place multiple fillers next to each other, you will either have some spaces where they are not filled or overlapping spaces that will change their color and it just won't look good enough. Next up, let's add curbs next to the fillers. We will fix these little things in a moment, and I will leave you for a bit while I work on the rest of the curbs and fillers. Alright, let's paint a couple of lines before we fix the curbs, specifically the little sections next to the crosswalks. I will use the bike crossing template for those. Okay, let's fix some curb endings. These are easy to do, but they get a bit tedious. All you need to do is select the curb line, identify which one of the offset types you need, and move the curb back until they blend together. Now this one will have an extra step to it. When you increase the offset, it won't work with a single curb. So we'll have to reduce the step to blend two curbs into one. And there we go. Now let's skip over the rest of the curb fixes. And let's add some yield signs, starting with the easy one, an intersection marking tool. Just add a stop line, convert it to a yield line, and scale them up to match the crosswalk a bit more. Next on the list are the yield signs we made earlier. You can move and copy procedural objects with Move It. Just make sure you have PO enabled at the bottom right, and then just move the signs as you would for any other object. Next, the line at the center of the bike lanes. Let's first fix the one at the segment. I go back and forth a bit with this, but for the most part I will use solid versions of the parking line template. This is not that important, but I'm doing the same thing that the real life roundabout has. So this is a great example on how to use alt lines to create intricate shapes, but I would just keep dashed lines on the sides if I were you. Now I just realized I forgot the other side of the bike lanes, so let's do those now. And there goes the first intersection. Before we start with the next intersection, I'm going to widen the incoming road to 150%. That way it makes the lanes wider at the roundabout, which is more realistic in this case. You know the drill by now, let's place some fillers. We have an interesting thing happening here. We should fix this with node controller, and a little spoiler alert, we won't be using this one later on. What we're really looking for here is to get as much asphalt area as possible. Okay, let's leave it here for now and continue with the crosswalks. Let me move that point into place, and let's go back to fillers. I need this part to be a block of pavement. We'll make use of those extra points in the road to do that. Lowering this into place will not be enough, but that is something we'll deal with later. And for now, let's just worry about our fillers. If you haven't noticed already, a lot of the things to do in a large intersection like a roundabout will be quite redundant. In some cases, you might be able to copy and paste the whole node, but this is not that kind of project. So let's place some curbs. If you remember, we used a 150% curb size for the bike roads, so we're going to translate that into the node and break it off where the curbs meet. Small difference is, this one is a prop, so we're going to increase the step to match the size. A moment of silence as I notice I used the wrong point for the exit lane. I'm also leaving you while I finish this node, since we've already gone through the next parts. jumping back in to show you how we're going to cover the edges properly, and it's quite easy. Just increase the scale of the grass line we made earlier and then shift it until it doesn't bleed into the road. This is the part where I rethink some previous choices. That small pavement filler we placed earlier won't be needed. Since we're going to fix it with procedural objects, it's pointless to keep it there. Now with that said, we're going to use the rounded lovable grass and later the pavement one and convert that to a procedural object. Press tab 3 times to go in the customization panel, and you'll see that we have a fourth option here, and that is the draw option, which is only available for rounded lovable surfaces. Now, the great thing about this option is that you can easily create a custom shape with it. Simply click on where you want the points to be, and once you're done, hit enter. In this case, I'll also lift it up a bit with the green position axis. Next up, I will move it while holding Ctrl to create a copy, and I'll do the same thing on the other side of the bike road. Note that I'm trying to fill this whole area, but stretching the surface too far will make it glitch, so you've got to find the sweet spot for its size. Now for this part, I'll use both grass and pavement surfaces, starting with the grass one. Let's nudge those into a better position using right click to select them and left click to move them. Now time for the pavement surface, same way we did the grass ones. Now don't be scared, I skipped ahead with the next node simply because it's going to be the same thing from the past two. So anyway, let's place our bike filler and let's find the best way to connect this point. None of them seem good enough, so let's draw a straight line. Now this part is really annoying to make. No matter how you do it with the intersection marking tool, it won't look good, so we have to do it manually. I'm placing some curve props and trying to curve them in the same direction as the filler. And then, using the prop anarchy mod, I'll press the period or dot button to scale them up and move it. Then comes the tedious task of aligning them. At this point, we need a cleaner transition into the normal width curve, so let's convert this one to PO using Move It, and then use the customization panel to shape it up. Don't worry about the white curve, we just need to color it gray. Now this might not be perfect, and while you can use more PO curves to make a cleaner transition, I won't spend that much time on it here, so let's finish this off with the pavement surface. I scale it down using the comma button to make it fit. And I'll leave it here for this part. Going back in again with the surfaces, let's fill this area with pavement. Time to place a curb on this side of the roundabout. I'll start by showing you how the normal intersection marking tool curb's shape will look like. Now I don't know about you, but I don't like how the middle lane's curb fits with the other two. I'm looking for a smoother curb, so let's remove the current curb and show you how we're going to do it. I will manually place the curb network over this part. Now I'll put it in place with Move It, and we'll place the edges on each side of the original curb, then curve it until it's right next to the road's curb. Now that we have our curb's shape, we can place the grass surface next to it. Now I usually hide lane arrows in roads to place them myself, but this one is needed since it's clipping over the grass. So I will use Bob by pressing Ctrl and B and select the car road and try to find the arrow I don't want and then hide it. Much better. Let me move this dashed line so it doesn't clip too. Time to make the center of the roundabout. First, let me show you how it should look like. And let's start by placing the black and white curb. To make it easier on ourselves, we'll put it away from the roundabout, placing 4 total nodes. Then we'll use Network Multi-Tool to make a circle out of it. You can move it to the center to visualize how it will look like. We're looking for a complete coverage of the whole surface. Once you're satisfied, move it back outside and press Enter to place it. Now for some node controller magic. Select the node and start by stretching it to 250% and then twist it by 30 degrees or minus 30, it depends on the node. We want it to be inclined like this. And then do the same thing for all 4 nodes. Now we can move it back into the roundabout. You can see why I've been saying we want the center to be as round as possible, so there's as little asphalt that's taken out as possible. In any case, I will attempt to get the black and white curve as close to the actual curve as possible without losing the circle shape. This should do. Now let's place the grass the same way we've been doing it earlier. Seems like it doesn't want to cooperate. Let's divide it into 2 parts then. Copy and paste that with Move It. Now I'm going to fix the points. You can hold down Control while moving them, so you won't be restricted to one axis of movement. It's easier to move them that way. Finally done here. At last we're at the detailing section. I went ahead and finished off some curb endings as well as placing some other things. For starters, we have these signs, which are custom made. You can place your own, of course. There's also those trees on this side. They are linked in the collection if you're interested in them. I've also finished off the pavement path using procedural objects and the pavement surface. This allows pedestrians to cross the whole roundabout. Now let's continue with the detailing. Starting with the center, I will place some bush and shrub clusters to fill it up. Then I will select them with Move It and use the comma button to reduce their size. That's possible through the Tree Anarchy mod. Once they're nicely spread out, I will lower them into the ground just a bit. And then I'll use the meadow grass to fill the rest of the area. First place a single one on the ground, then lower it down until there's just the tips showing. After that, copy it with Move It and paste it all over the place. This technique will give a nice and fluffy grass texture, but we're not done quite yet. I'm going to place a ruined decal on all of that. This gives off the illusion of soil below all this, and the grass blends really well with it. I reduced the decal size with comma, by the way. Let's add some more grass at the center. And now we're finished with the center area. Let's continue to the next part. Starting with the grass, I'll adjust the height and then paste it all over the place. Let me just fix that before we continue. Now for the texture of this area, I will use something different. I will first add moss decals by Sully. Just a couple here and there, not too much. Then I'll use some dry grass decals, also placed with moderation. Now we're done here. You can see how nice the texture of the ground is. Next up are the grass medians on this side. We're doing the same thing again with the moss, placing them around the trees. Now I got a little sidetracked, so let's place grass on the medians before we go back there. Due to their small size, the meadow grass might not be the best fit for them. I will first try to show you how that looks like before I continue. You can try shrinking them, but that's probably too annoying to do over and over. So let's move to the better way of doing this, and that is using fluffy grass, specifically the short one. It's much smaller than the meadow grass by default, so you can use it in tighter spots. We're still going to lower it into the ground. That's the rule of thumb while doing any kind of foliage. Next up is this large median, and I can use the fluffy grass here, but with that much space, we can use the meadow instead. I'm going to place them in a zigzag arrangement, overlapping them a bit. And then select them all and decrease their size once, then adjust their elevation. For the small part, I'll go back to the fluffy grass. And meadow for the next two. Now that we've circled back here, I'm going to place the meadow grass in a patchy way, not trying to fill the whole area, mainly avoiding the mossy parts. The grass looks too tall here. You don't want your grass to stand out too much. Let's select the grass and lower it into the ground first. Much better. Now I'm going to take one patch of grass and lower it even more until you can barely see it, and place that one over the empty parts. Looking good. Now let's copy and paste those on the other side. Moving along to the large road, we've already placed the grass there, but we're missing trees. I like using some plain street trees for these medians. I'm removing those at the start for visibility purposes, and I'll use the small tree first in the middle, and then continue with the larger ones after. And that is it for the nature detailing. Since this is a tutorial and the area is quite empty, I will copy and paste the grass and decals we placed all over the place. Before I fill the whole area with grass, I will quickly place some lampposts in areas that don't have any light in them. starting with a large dual lamp at the center and then some smaller ones all around. Almost forgot the bike intersection, and that's it. Now I'm going to place the rest of the grass before we do some road detailing. And here we have the finished result. I've also added some shrubs here and there, and let's work on the roads now. I will start by placing some tire marks. Good places to put them are tight curves and at the end of long and straight roads where drivers would typically brake. I usually place 2 on top of each other to make the mark stand out. The best advice I can give for adding damage to roads is to not overdo it. A handful of carefully placed decals look much better than a road full of cracks. Now time to move to the road wear. I will first place them all around the roundabout. We will later make them smaller and dimmer, so don't worry about them not looking right at the moment. Now use Move It's picker to select the road wear decals and shrink them with the comma button, then you can go around and make them better blend in together. You can lower them into the ground a bit to make them more transparent. For now, I will continue with some damage decals. This one specifically is very generic and can be used frequently without feeling excessive. Next is the second damage decal. A good place to have it is at the edge of a road, next to a curb. Don't be afraid to shrink it to make it fit better. The third and last damage decal is a very large and noticeable one. It's hard to fit it in and you can't use it more than twice in a scene anymore, and it will become an eyesore, and the main goal of road damage is to blend in. Here I finally found the best spot to place it, large enough to fit it in. Next up are stain decals. They're great ways of adding texture to your roads and pavements. Be wary of placing them on grass. It makes it look weird since you don't usually find grey on grass. You can make use of the intersection marking tool grass fillers in this case, since decals don't work on them. Getting closer to the end here, it's time for cracks. try placing them in spots where you haven't placed much already. Overlapping different damages is not always a great idea. Finally, placing some potholes in a similar way to the cracks. Looking good. Now one last touch up for this tutorial. I'll fix the choppiness of the wear decals to make them smoother. And here we are at last. I hope you've enjoyed this journey. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone on the roundabouts after this. And don't forget to join the Discord for more content or help if you need some.